Here in the UK, there's a really important document called EH40/2005. Now, that might sound a bit dry, but it's all about governing the invisible dangers in our workplaces. So today, we're going to break down what these workplace exposure limits are and how they're designed to protect you from hazards you might not even know are there.
It's a pretty powerful question when you stop and think about it. We're all taught to look out for a wet floor or be careful with heavy machinery. But what about the risks that don't make a sound? The ones that don't have a smell? That's exactly what we're diving into today.
All right, first up, let's get a handle on what we even mean by invisible dangers. We're going beyond the obvious stuff here to uncover the hidden hazards that regulations like EH40/2005 are built to control.
Yeah, when you think about workplace safety, your brain probably jumps to, immediate accidents. But the International Labor Organization points out that some of the biggest threats are what they call ambient factors, things that are just part of the work environment that can really damage our health over time. We're talking about chemical fumes from welding, fine dusts in the air, or even just the constant physical forces of noise and vibration.
And this is where it gets really concrete. These aren't just vague ideas. They are measured risks with serious consequences. An angle grinder screaming at 95 decibels, day in and day out, that can lead to permanent hearing loss. Using an orbital sander that vibrates at 12 meters per second squared, that can cause lasting damage to the nerves and blood vessels in your hands and arms. And of course, the long-term effects of breathing in certain fumes or dusts, well, they're incredibly serious, from chronic lung diseases all the way to cancer.
So, if these dangers are potentially all around us, how on earth are they managed? Well, regulators have come up with a really clever concept. You can almost think of it as a daily safety budget for your health.
This right here is the official term, and it's at the very heart of documents like EH40/2005, the Occupational Exposure Limit, or OEL. It's basically a scientifically determined line in the sand, a level of exposure that, based on all the current evidence, an average person can be exposed to day after day without it hurting them. I find this is the easiest way to get your head around it. Imagine every single day you go to work, you have a health allowance for each specific risk. Your employer's #1 job is to make sure you never, ever spend more than that allowance.
And this chart illustrates the goal perfectly. The big bar on the left, that's the safety limit, your total allowance for the day. And that much, much smaller bar next to it, that's what you were actually exposed to. A safe workplace is one where that little bar is always kept as low as humanly possible, way, way below the official limit.
Now, managing this safety budget isn't just one person's job. It's a whole system, really, with clear roles and responsibilities for everyone involved, from the government all the way down to each and every worker.
Let's break this down. So first you have the competent authority. In the UK, that's the Health and Safety Executive, or HSE. They're the ones who do the research, publish guides like EH40/2005, and set those official limits. Then you have the employer. They have the main legal responsibility to check for risks in their specific workplace and then put controls in place to keep exposure down. And finally, there's the worker. You have a duty to follow the safety rules, but, and this is so important, you also have the fundamental right to know the risks and to be protected from them. It's a three-way partnership. Okay, so let's get practical. How does an employer actually keep that exposure bar low? Well, it's definitely not guesswork. It's a very strategic process. They use this incredibly powerful tool called the hierarchy of controls. Think of it like a playbook. It's a step-by-step approach for getting rid of or reducing risks, and it's prioritized, starting with the absolute most effective measures and working down to the least.
And you always start at the top. The best possible fix is always elimination, just getting rid of the dangerous thing completely. If you can't do that, you try substitution. Can you swap it for something safer? If not, you move down to engineering controls, which means physically separating people from the hazard. After that comes administrative controls, which is about changing how people work. And only at the very bottom, as the last line of defense, do you rely on personal protective equipment, or PPE. So what does this actually look like in the real world? Well, for elimination, you might automate a noisy process, so a person doesn't even have to be in the room. Can't do that? Okay, how about substitution? Maybe you can use a water-based paint instead of one full of nasty solvents. Still no good? An engineering control could be as simple as building a soundproof box around a loud machine. An administrative control might be rotating your team through different jobs so nobody gets too much exposure to vibration. And then finally, at the very end of the line, you have PPE, like giving someone a high-quality respirator mask. The key is to always try to solve the problem as high up this list as possible. So, we've gone through the hazards, the limits, and the controls. But what's the single most important thing to take away from all of this, for you, as an employee?
It really all comes down to this one simple but incredibly powerful idea, which is the whole reason organizations like the ILO even exist: safety at work. And that includes being protected from invisible dangers isn't some perk your boss gives you if they're in a good mood. It is a fundamental human right.
And that fundamental right comes with some very specific things you're entitled to. You have the right to be told about the risks you're facing and to be part of the conversation about them. Your employer has to give you any necessary training, for free. You absolutely have the right to report dangerous conditions without being afraid of getting in trouble. And, of course, you must be given the proper safety gear. Just knowing these rights is the first and most important step to making sure they're being respected. So, we'll leave you with this question to think about. This whole system of exposure limits and controls is there, on paper, designed to protect you every single day. The framework exists, but is it actually being followed where you work? That's a question worth asking. Thanks for tuning in.